Some of our guests just get me all fired up because of the work they do and who they are, and the compassion, dedication, and focus they bring to the table, as well as the work that they're doing as far as supporting an animal sanctuary, expanding to Europe, and also just building a business that's built on true and amazing customer service. I think you're going to love hearing this story. This is a guest that we brought back because the story is so great. You got to hear it again. And if you missed it the first time, this is your chance to hear about how All Y'all Foods has been built from the ground up, how they built a business around a mission, and how they're not only bringing it to many of us here in the US, but how they're taking it worldwide by expanding to Europe, creating viral videos, and giving back at the same time. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to our podcast. We have a very special guest today because I have interviewed this guest before, but I'm so excited to have him back for a couple of different reasons. I love talking about vegan business success, but I'm also equally excited because they have done a ton of expansion. They have gone outside the US, over to Europe, and I think it's really exciting when we can see vegan brands kind of spread out to go out to larger audiences. And also, I always love a vegan plant-based business success story. So I'm going to be really excited about today's interview because I not only think there's an opportunity for many of you who maybe listened to our first podcast with this guest, but anyone who's joining us for the first time. Our guest is going to share some insights into the work that they're doing, how they expanded, and not just that, how marketing has shifted, changed, and even a viral opportunity that has happened fairly recently. So let me introduce our guest and say hello, and then we'll jump into the background and all of my questions. So Brett, it is wonderful to have you back with us today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. It's always a pleasure. So let's give everyone a little bit of background, just because some people might have listened to the other podcast, but for anyone new or even an update, I just want to give them a little bit of background on the company. The fact that you guys are a mission-based, plant-based protein company, I think is a good grounding, but I want to give them the history of how you started, how you began, and then we'll pick up with all the great things you've been doing since the last time we talked.
Okay, cool. I can do that. So like pretty much everyone else, I grew up on a meat-centric diet. You got to have meat for protein. and um, and after learning more information around the whole animal agriculture thing and health perspective, and of course sustainability, I realized in an instant on a trip to the zoo back in 2016 that all animals are present and aware and don't want to die. And I turned to my wife. I said, "Done eating animals." She's like, "Okay." And then the next year, I read that beef is our second largest agricultural commodity here in Texas, and that bothered me. And I challenged myself aloud. I said, "Well, are you going to bitch about it, or are you going to change it?" Because you know how people like to just complain. And I said, "I'm going to change it." So I decided to do jerky. And the reason for that is I grew up eating a lot of jerky, and I couldn't find anything that I really liked. And so I began working on formulas, recipes, formulas when you make hundreds or thousands of pounds at a time. And I wanted each one to represent a region of Texas. We use things like the juice of the fruit of the prickly pear because it's a state plant of Texas. And then I wanted to support an animal sanctuary. So there are a lot of really wonderful farm animal sanctuaries in Texas. But I found one with the most cows at the time, and that was Rowdy Girl Sanctuary. And they're actually a former cattle operation turned animal sanctuary, the first one in the world. And to date, a portion from every bag we sell goes to them. And we donate that to them. We've donated over $50,000 to date to them to support, to care for the animals. And we're in stores from LA to New York City, and we sell online, direct to consumer, and all that stuff. And we launched in May of 2018, and almost 600,000 bags later, here we are.
That is a wonderful story. I love how you started. I love that you're making not only these donations to Animal Sanctuary, but having that partnership, I think, is really key because I think it's so important for us to kind of all work together as part of this community.
Mhm.
Um, and I love all the sales that you're having. I think one thing that would be exciting, especially when we were talking as we were getting started, since we've talked, you've expanded the line. You've been testing new products, testing different options. Can you give people maybe a little bit of insight into how you tested, where you decided to go, and why you decided to kind of go outside of maybe that initial kind of jerky space, and what's been your experiences?
Yeah. So when I ate meat, what I ate more of than anything was pork. And I wanted to come up with a product that could replace one of the products that we get from pigs, and that would be bacon. And so I created its Big Crunchy Bacony Bits. We launched those in July of 2020, and they quickly became number one meatless bacon on Amazon. And then last year, I was missing the opportunity to enjoy. Cheez-Its have been around for 100 years. Goldfish came out in 1966. But if you look at the ingredients, in addition to dairy and wheat, they use TBHQ and different things that, again, I would not consider appropriate food products in addition to the dairy. So I'm like, we can do that better. So we use the same base that we use on the bacony bits, but we add nutritional yeast, of course, and other things to create an amazing cheesy crunch. In fact, people love them so much, we're going to be changing the name from Cheesy Bits to Cheesy Snacks because people just love to munch on them rather than put them on salads or baked potatoes or in soup or whatever. They like to snack on them, and each bag has 33 grams of protein. So that's as far as product evolution. We have other flavors we're coming out with of the jerky and other products altogether, but those are a little bit further down the road. And as far as expansion, in addition to in the U.S., we did recently transition over into 10 countries in Europe by meeting. I did the fancy food show back at the end of June in New York City, and I wanted to meet importers that would bring the product in. And we're working with one who handles all the packaging change requirements. It's usually an addition of stickers, that kind of thing, depending on the country. And they're 5 to 7 years ahead of us when it comes to embracing plant-based options. So we're available in those countries on Amazon to begin. Eventually, they'll work into retailers, and that's been a godsend, so to speak, to be able to carry the message further and to provide people again with an amazing protein that they can enjoy the chew and the flavor of, as well as snack it, top it, cook it.
Absolutely. And I love that you decided to expand. I know a lot of us have the dreams of what we think our business can be or what we can do, but
Mhm.
sometimes you get that fear, you get that nervousness of, will I be able to keep up? What about regulations? What about those things? How did you kind of take it from the idea of, yes, I want to expand. Yes, I want to go into these countries. And like you said, you went to, get introduced to importers to actually saying, okay, this is something I'm going to try and do, and kind of navigating that unknown kind of process that goes with expansion, especially when you expand to another country.
Right. Well, in this case, it's always been since we started. That's why we haven't like catapulted into the stratosphere because the funds haven't been there. We've got to go very easy, and it's always a focus on bottom line rather than top line or vanity metrics. And what I was able to do was find the right importer that there is no added cost. There is no huge investment. It's like, here's a product, here's a reasonable cost that they can make money on, and then they handle the rest. And that was really it. There's a lot of retailers that we've either not approached or not gone into because of the cost of doing business. It's kind of like you got to have the funds to expand and not make money and maybe lose a little money to gain brand awareness, but we've not been able to do that, so we focus up our attention on social media for that.
And I love that. I'm glad that you're kind of not getting caught up in those vanity metrics because I think for a lot of people, it's what people talk about a lot. So often it's, it's natural to try to want to gravitate towards it.
Sure.
So I'm really excited to hear that. But I also think it's an interesting story because you talked about social media. And I know recently you had a post go viral. Can you talk about what you did and how that worked? Give us some of those metrics. And then also give us a sense of what it has meant for the business. So it isn't just a big number, but how it's actually translated into growth.
Right. Yes. So we play on almost all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, um, and YouTube and Threads, but we don't on a couple of the others that we could. TikTok, we're focused on selling and have a TikTok shop there. You're able to. I was going to say fairly easy, but I'm going to say you can. How about if I just leave it at that? If I'm being honest, you can, link it to a Shopify site, which our whole site and our business is run on. And there are sales. I have a wonderful person, Romy, who does the lives on there. She's a bit younger than I, and then demographics, it plays better. I've done them before. They're fun to do, but at the same time, she brings a completely different energy to it. But like on YouTube, you're talking about the viral video. We've been focused a little bit more on YouTube as of late because the customers there have more, what my social media guy Shane says, have more stickiness in that they're just a completely different, not completely, they're a very different follower than you'd have maybe on TikTok. In that they tend to spend more and they tend to spend a little more time looking at more content. They're not there for necessarily the dopamine hits like a lot of short videos do, very short. And we posted a video of some cows enjoying a new scratcher that was installed, and to date, it surpassed last night over 6 million views. And what that means is I spend a lot of time responding to comments because I don't have a bot doing it. I don't have AI doing it. It's me. And so it takes hours, not a complaint, just an observation. But it also gives me a chance to interact in a way that's positive with people who may have made comments and I'm like, what? Just to educate, especially the whole plants have all the protein we need, because most people will be like, are you crazy? No, I'm 10 years in and I'm not. But what it does for us is it grows awareness. Like it currently has about 10,000 comments, and it's got, I forget how many over 100,000 likes. But it also drives followers. We've gotten well over 2,000 new followers. We've had hundreds of sales as a result, and more than anything, it's being able to introduce people to our brand, who, we mean what we do. We're not just a division of some meat packing plant. It's owned by a vegan. It's all about plant-based proteins. It's about serving and nourishing the human, leaving the animals being help and support for their care at Rowdy Girl. And then when it comes to sustainability, we use less than 10% of the land and water to start with, compared to beef production. So the virality of things, you never know what's going to land, and you just keep putting it out there and trying different strategies and be consistent, because consistency is going to pay off more than anything else ever will, is constantly putting content out. And what people don't realize is you can take content from a month ago, 2 months ago, and reuse it. Just kind of reimagine it, do things a little bit differently, because a lot of people don't see it. I wouldn't encourage to use the same thing all year long, because we do a ton of new content. But just not everything has to be new. It can be repurposed, new song, new text, whatever. And that has been our biggest play, is my investment in a group to help me have a presence on social media. And we do a little bit of ad spend. We've done that for a few months now, which has helped as well. But I've never had the budget to spend money, so ours is very modest. I've actually took half of the ad spend we use on Amazon and put it towards meta ads, and that's driving a lot of followers. It's driving some sales, but more followers than anything. So again, it's just growing brand awareness, and just figuring out ways to do that, as well as good email funnels, which is paramount. because once you create good ones, then they just automatically handle that. They just automatically go out. So it's a several prong approach, but when you have very limited budgets to no budget, it's the way that's proving the most effective for us today.
I love that you walked us through all of that because I think, there's a kind of a myth around running a business, the idea that there's like all these funds and everyone's on every platform, or, you know what I mean? You just outsource it and there's just this person that's going to do it all for you. And the reality, like you said, had a viral post, love it, but it does take me hours to stay engaged and talk to people. Yeah, I don't think we all, especially a lot of people when they're hoping for that viral piece, they don't realize what that also means on the other side, like the blessing of it, but also the work that it comes with. So I'm so
Sure.
glad you tapped into that. And I'm also glad you talked about email. I'm going to maybe throw another question to you about this because I think a lot of people talk about social media, and I do think social media is a great tool for discovery. But I really love email for nurturing and repeat business. I really
Hmm.
find that email is great for top of mind. People sometimes forget to reorder. What I mean, holiday time comes, I just feel like email is such a strong channel that social media is kind of overshadowed at times.
Hmm.
And I'm curious your take on it. Like, do you feel that email is a very strong channel for you? And how do you kind of feel about it in your kind of marketing mix?
Yeah, it is today. I haven't always paid attention to it very well, and I've had different people help me along the way that I could have chosen better. We'll just say that. But it is important. In fact, I'm sitting here going, "Oh, I need to do a holiday email." But the thing is, I know people who will give up their email or their phone number, and then they get bombarded two a day and crazy stuff like that. I'm like, who thinks people are going to stay with that? So we're very gentle. We don't spam people. We don't push stuff out every week. It's a very gentle relationship, if you will. And you just have to set up the system. Do some A/B testing, ABC testing, to find out what generates more sales, what people actually click and look at, and bring value to them. Because more than anything, I get told this time and again, is bring value to people in your posts, in your social media posts, in your emails. So many times we'll offer recipes out of our cookbook and different things for people just to, again, to bring value. We don't want to just keep bugging buy, buy, buy. People are going to buy when they're ready to buy. But here's who we are. Here's what we're up to. Here's how we help make a difference. Imperfect as we are, and so I think it's important. We use Klaviyo. There are other systems that you can use fairly inexpensively, depending on the email funnel. And we don't buy emails. We get them right from the customer or events that we do. We'll capture names and emails and put those into the system because that's a very inexpensive way to market to people. But again, you got to respect these people and think about, do you really want to get an email from some company three times a week or every day? Or no, I don't. I can't tell you how many unsubscribes I hit. So that's something to consider.
Absolutely. I think in this strategy, we do have to figure out the touch. And also, I think in all marketing, we have to figure out, like you said, how much value we bring. I mean, marketing isn't just sales because some of the brands that I know and love, I don't necessarily always buy because they say buy today.
Hmm.
But, I buy or I pay attention because I care about the mission. And I think
Hmm.
that's the key that's really amazing about the work you do is how mission driven you are.
Hmm.
And having a brand that not only has that clarity around their mission, but being able to communicate that more in your marketing, I really think is such a valuable thing. And I wish more people did that. I think sometimes, you know, we get frustrated or we get tired or, things just maybe aren't going the
Right.
way we wished in our business. So then we try to shortcut it. And like you said, we just start sending out buy emails. But I think if we all kind of took a deep breath um, and sit back and think about what are we trying to accomplish, a lot of it is around education, a lot of it's around support, and a lot of it's around, the work that we're doing. How is it changing the world?
Absolutely. It's And that's the thing I've noticed as of late. There are a lot of brands that sell in the plant-based space or vegan space, whatever you'd like to call it, and they're not vegans. Ownership is not vegan. The people, and it's just margins, which they have a right to do because there's some really good brands out there, But the thing is, in my heart of hearts, I'm like, if you're a vegan brand or a vegan restaurant, I'm going to support you first every time because that's where my heart and my mind lives. Um, and while I very much value and appreciate plant-based options at regular places, because when you hang out with non-vegans, it's great that everyone can get something they like. But when it comes to snacks and different things, I'm like, find out who the real vegan brands are and maybe consider supporting them first. Again, if that's your conviction, cool. If not, I get it. Believe me, because it wasn't for a long time for me.
I'm glad you brought that up. And it actually just speaks to me personally because I think it's so important that we have brands with vegans running them because the
Yeah.
decisions that are made, the practice that are done, the way people are treated, even in the organization, how customers are treated, all of that can flow through, you know what I mean, that kind of compassion that often I find, vegans kind of bring to brands. And I think sometimes when you have brands that don't have people who are connected to the mission, especially in the decision making chair, that's why brands, struggle and trip up and just do weird stuff sometimes that you're like, why in the world? But
Hmm.
I think the other side of what you were saying is, not everyone knows which brands are really driven by vegans because I also think it's so great to have a business that can support a vegan's lifestyle. Because I think for a lot of us, when we went vegan, we had to get a job or keep a job and pay rent and pay
Sure.
mortgages and things
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So it gets hard. And the more and more, people who are vegan that run businesses, I think can really make a difference in not only the products that are offered, but creates a different ecosystem kind of for our community.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's just, again, it just when I realized that there's so many various brands, and I'm not going to call anyone out. Okay. But there's just so many brands that they're run by or owned by people that have nothing to do with veganism or plant-based or that sort of thing. It's just about a financial win. Again, nothing wrong with that. It's just that I want to support those who have kind of crossed over, if you will, into the mindset of compassion for all things. And
Absolutely.
so I know that this is my mission. This is my calling, if you will, for today, because I believe the universe or God brought me to this point and continues to put things in my path that work. And I keep trusting the process and surrendering to it every day. And some days are I wouldn't say unpleasant, but they can be kind of scary. But if you really have faith and trust the process and just look to do the next right thing, they based on results, they keep working.
I like that you said that because I think for some people it might be listening or watching this, they might need some of that encouragement
Hmm.
because it is hard. There are a lot of sacrifices that come with running your own business.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of the kind of emotional journey of, the weight of the responsibility, the decisions that have to be made, and even like the choice that you made to expand. Sometimes when you want to expand, that unknown on the other side can keep a lot of people from moving forward, can keep a lot of people from taking that leap,
Hmm.
um, or worry that that expansion may risk, what they have already going on here in the US. How
Yes.
do you, and if it's too personal, we
No,
can
and
hold
there's never,
it.
nothing too personal. I'll make something up. Go ahead.
But how do you manage that? Like, how do you manage the
Yeah.
pressure of keeping the business going, keeping the business striving, especially through the ebbs and flow of the
Hmm.
demand for plant-based proteins, while still reaching for the stars, while still saying, hey, there's an opportunity for me to expand?
Yeah.
And also under the weight of, oh, I got to go do some comments for the next hour and a half because I had a great success.
Hmm.
All of that kind of can weigh on all of us.
Sure. Great question. The thing is I've had very few friends in my life. I've had my whole life since I was a teenager. And one of them, Tracy, has turned me on to a book that just blew my mind. And I'll share this with everybody. It is called The Untethered Soul. It's by a cat by the name of Michael Singer. It's not a religious book. It's a book that talks to us about that voice in our head and what it is and what it's not. And it gives you clarity. So that whole fear that you're talking about, future events appear real. I get it. I don't listen to it. It's there, and I'm like, hey, little buddy, what you doing? And you go with it anyway because you can't shut it off. It diminishes once you get educated on what it is and what it's not. There's also another book by Eckhart Tolle called The Power of Now. Both are great books. I always suggest the Untethered Soul because it's a simpler, very kind of concise read or listen. I live in Texas, so I spend a bit of time in the windshield, if you will, not in the windshield, but driving, and so I have what's called windshield time, and I listen to books because I have more time to do that there because my mind is always you need to do this, you need to do that, so I can get that information in. So that allows me to, and that in my relationship with God, I consider God the universe anymore because I know through some experiences I had that we're all one. Everything on this planet is one. As weird as that may seem, that works for me, and I know that to be true. And as a result, I can trust that if I'm surrendering, and that doesn't mean give up and admit defeat or anything. It's just about going, look, the universe is going to play how it's going to play. I can set intentions and I can do so much to go in the direction I feel led to go in. And how that works out is beyond my control. I just have to do the next right thing and trust that whatever the outcome is how it's supposed to be and be okay with that. I don't have to fight it. Most people fight it. I'm like, you don't have to fight it. That's an option. And those are the things we learn, again, because we would have learned all the smartest stuff and all the most effective stuff if we grew up with that. And most people don't because they didn't and they didn't and they didn't, So it's on us to find a new path to have it different. But it's always the conversation in our heads that either support us or beat us down. And what you have to do is learn to become friends with it, understand what it is and it's not, because if you think about it, that voice in your head, that's not you. You're the one who hears it. It's the egoic mind, and it thinks it has to have a job. Think of all the times it's told you, oh, this is going to happen or that could happen. And 90 whatever percent of the time, it never happens. It's not being in the moment. We're the only place we've ever lived. So I would encourage people to pick up one of those books and read it to get clarity on what's going on in there. And as a result, does it make me perfect? Do I look perfect? No, I'm not perfect. But what it does do is bring me more peace of mind and allows me to be a more effective human because while I'm here, I just want to do more good. That's all I want to do.
I love that. First off, thank you so much for the book recommendations. I think that's going to be just really helpful for people. And I love what you said about that voice is not you because you're hearing it.
Mm-mm.
I think sometimes in our minds we start to gel everything together and get confused because sometimes the voice sounds a little bit loud, or we start perking up our ears too much and it sounds louder than it really is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a really good point, and I think a great thing for people to kind of even take away from today's session about, how to manage those voices sometimes that are popping up in our head and sometimes, keeping us from, being our best version. So
Sure.
as we wrap up today's interview, I do want to
Already?
make sure. Oh, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I said already?
I know. I looked down and was like, oh no, it went
I'm just
so
playing.
fast. But a couple of things, I do want to make sure that people know how to get in touch with you. I do want to make sure that people, if they're interested in hearing more about your story, supporting your mission, if they happen to be in Europe and they're like, hey, I didn't know, is it in my country? All of those things. What's the best way for people to reach out? What's the best way for people to interact with you, whether it's social media, email marketing, go to your website? How do we make sure people can get in touch?
If they want to get in touch through social media, I'll see it. It's All Y'all's Foods on all the platforms. ALLYALLSFOODS, All Y'all's Foods. And through our website, you can send in comments. I get those too. I am still customer service because I don't, and it doesn't mean I'm perfect by any means. It just means no one's going to care more than me. And I don't want to have bots doing it. I don't want to have AI doing it. I want to do it. At some point, you've got to push stuff off with other people, but to me, it means everything to interact with a consumer, whether they're a customer or not. And always happy to answer questions. Like we were talking before we started recording. If you're in the plant-based space and you have questions or need ideas or whatever, I'm always happy to be of support to those that are pushing plants, to my fellow plant pushers. I can just share my experience and the experience of others. And doesn't mean I have all the answers, but I would say follow us on social media. Our website is allyallsfoods.com. You can find us there. We're also on Amazon. And like I said, in about 450 stores on our website, you can look and see if there's one near you that carries us, because we're carried here in HEB in about 70 of their stores, the larger ones.
Oh, I'm so glad you said the HEB thing. I had it on my mind and was like, oh, I didn't mention it yet. So glad that you mentioned that. And I really encourage anyone who's listening, watching, or checking this out, please support. It's so important for us to support our fellow plant-based vegan businesses. And the support sometimes is purchase, and sometimes the support is just sharing it with your community, letting other people know and make sure they're aware of this, amazing product, and also just the amazing person behind the brand and even team behind the brand. Because sometimes when it comes to marketing, it's just great when people can endorse, people can say, hey, check this out. So if you're listening, watching, please, please, please support Brett. Please support All Y'all's Foods, because I just think it's wonderful to have companies like this in our ecosystem, companies that are driving growth, companies that are driven by compassion, by mission, supporting nonprofits, and a company that is expanding. I think that's the other thing. A lot of people are very nervous in their business. A lot of people are worried about uncertain times, and expansion is such a wonderful thing to see in a business, but it's also important for us to show up for our vegan businesses. So I'm asking everyone to show up and show out, please.
That's awesome. Thanks.
Anything you want to share as a final word, either recommendations for or advice for fellow entrepreneurs that are out there on this similar journey, or anything out there for anyone who's listening today that you just want to kind of leave them with some final words?
Yeah, one of the things, the more recent, not arguments technically, around meat is, if meat was so wonderful, we wouldn't surround it with plants, smoke, char, and salt. In other words, you never hear anyone go, well, that's a really good beef. Well, no, you're talking about the rub. You're talking about the marinade. You're talking about the plants, like from a sandwich to a burger to a steak to a roast. It's all about the plants. We're just used to it served on a meat vehicle. And
Mm.
so companies like mine work to replicate that chew. Like our jerky is tender. And so it chews more like a chicken than a hard beef jerky. It's not like that. And so just remember that, because I point that out to people now. I'm like, you think it's about the meat. You're just used to that particular chew from a sandwich or burger or steak, very different chew. And so we just replicate that chew and plug the flavors in, and you can get all that. That includes fiber instead of cholesterol, and doesn't involve animals and all the stuff, from a sustainability standpoint that's required. So it's better, again, humans, animals, and planet. And so that's just something new that I speak to, that might be useful for others to speak to.
Absolutely. I think that was perfect. Thank you so much for
Of course.
sharing. Thank you so much for spending the time with me today. And also, thank you for the business that you built. It's great to hear the story. It's great inspiration, great tips. Even for me, I'm going to go check out some of those books because I love, just making sure I stay grounded.
Mhm.
But I just want to thank you for your time today. And it's been great catching up with you and hearing about all your great growth.
Thank you, Stephanie. And I very much appreciate what it is you do to make the difference, because you're doing it. Thank you.
Thank you. And for everyone who listened to this or watched this podcast, we so appreciate your support. We appreciate you sharing this on to other people and showing up for us. So we're going to wrap up today's interview and we will see you next time. Bye.